Thanks for checking out this show review. So this is for the 2025 show Alien Earth. This one was on FX, and then I ended up watching it on Hulu when the episodes ended up being available. And I was really excited for this one because I really like the Alien franchise. I think it's literally one of the best horror franchises out there. So I was like, cool, we get some more entries here. And yeah, I'm just all about it. So, created by Noah Hawley, who also did Fargo, Legion, and Bones. I have not seen any of those. I've heard good things about Legion. I've heard great things about Fargo. And I really haven't heard much of anything about Bones, unfortunately. But Alien Earth, I don't want to give too much synopsis-wise, but it's basically about bringing the xenomorph or alien to Earth. So, it starts out with a ship that ends up having a bunch of specimens on it that's owned by this very rich person. I was going to say like billionaire, but I don't even know because I don't think they put a figure on their money in this show. But someone who's very wealthy, who's bringing this ship somewhere, and there's a problem on the ship. I'm not going to talk about what it is because you'll need to see that yourself if you're interested in the show. And it ends up going down and crashing on Earth, where there's another very rich person on Earth who decides he's going to send his crew in and salvage everything and see what he can do with these specimens, even though he doesn't know anything about them. So obviously you can see where there's a lot of room for some issues to occur and the horror to ensue and the aliens to do their thing. Now, that's where I'm going to leave the synopsis, but I will say that I wasn't huge on this show. It started really well for me, and as it kept going, it got less great. I think the first maybe 3 or 4 episodes had me pretty hooked in because that's when you're still getting getting your footing with the concepts that they're throwing out there. You're learning the characters. You're starting to think, oh, where are we going to go with this? It's opening so many good possibilities, and it does. It opens a lot of great possibilities with this show. But as you get further on in the season, you're just kind of like, oh, like now I can see exactly where they're going with things. And especially as you get to the end of it, I was just kind of like, okay, there were a lot of great things we could have done with this, and we chose not to do those things, really. We chose something safer, something a lot more low-key, and I just don't feel like it worked. And one of the things that I feel like was one of the biggest problems from the outset of writing this is it appears to me that they wrote this with the aim of having a second season. And I honestly don't think it's going to end up with a second season. Would I watch it if there was one? Maybe, but I don't think it's going to end up with one, especially based off what I'm hearing from a lot of people who have watched the show, because a lot of people were pretty let down by the end of the show. But anyway, going to talk about my notes, and I'll talk more about my overall experience with the show at the end and give it my rating out of 5 stars. There's text in the beginning of the show that lays out a very interesting premise. That's what I was saying. Like, there's some really cool, interesting stuff kind of thrown out there. It also presents a horrifying potential future for us in the real world. You'll see what I mean if you end up watching it, or if you already have watched it, you'll know what I'm talking about. But I think it does a really great job of making people kind of reflect ahead and say, this kind of is a future we could see for ourselves on Earth. And it's not a good one in a lot of aspects, not just like the alien aspect of it, but the structure of society and who's running things and all that type of stuff. So yeah. An early scene harkens back to the first Alien film and makes you feel right at home with the franchise. The interior ship design looks exactly like the first film. That's the ship that ends up crashing on Earth. I love that they decided to do that. It put me back in that first film, and it gave me all the feelings of the excitement of how wonderful that film is, and I just love that they took it back there. I think maybe they should have had more influences throughout the show, maybe, but they also have to do their own thing, so I get that. There's a bit of a lambasting of billionaire tech geniuses, and I'm going to say I put geniuses in quotation marks because these tech billionaires are not geniuses. Like, in the show and in real life, they're not geniuses. They're just people who typically come from money and then buy things. And then people just view them as being a genius because they can kind of run a company, which actually just ends up being comprised of hiring people to run it for them. And that's about it. So it plays around with a lot of that stuff, which is very important because horror as a genre is always kind of reflecting back to the audience what's going on in society, what are the problems with society, and billionaires are one of them. Actually, billionaires are the primary problem with society, let's be honest. So anyway, I like that they go there with it. It definitely feels like they're stretching the runtime to hit their number of episodes. That is one of the things you really don't want to hear about a TV show, is that it feels like they're just stretching. Actually, even worse for a movie, but for a TV show, they're just like stretch it, stretch it, stretch it. There was so much potential here that you shouldn't need to stretch it. There's a lot of conversations that end up happening that really didn't even need to happen in the first place. There are a lot of characters in there that didn't even need to be in the show because they amount to just about nothing, and that's just a problem for me personally. I'm just like, what, when you're dedicating a bunch of time on a character who ends up amounting to basically nothing in the show, it tells me you're just adding stuff in because you don't have enough story. And with a premise that was set up like this, you should have enough story because there are a lot of possibilities. It just leads me to them having issues. Now, I'm saying some negative stuff, but overall, I did enjoy it enough. I'm not going overall negative with my review. I'm just telling you. The episode intros have a montage of past events and a very interesting kind of ominous recap type of way. I love the fact... Sorry, my cat's making noise in the blinds, but I love the fact that they decided to do that. I think it plays in a very creepy way. I think it looks cool and stylistic and just fun. It's better than doing like a normal old school type of recap, so I love that. It's just images. Like there's no... They don't even say, like, last time on Alien Earth, which a lot of shows still do that kind of thing. Episode 5 goes back to flesh out some events from the beginning, and I found that to be one of the most interesting episodes. So it's one of those things where the show starts, you're kind of like, okay, this is a really cool intro, but how did we get here? So you're hoping that you'll find that out later. You do find that out in episode 5. So I think episode 5 maybe was my favorite episode for that reason. So I love that they decided to go back and do that for an entire episode. But then it's after episode 5 that it's like, and it's 8 episodes total. So like 6, 7, 8, I just aren't great, unfortunately. Some of the dialogue is rough. Okay, that's my next note. I was going to jump ahead. Some of the dialogue is not the best. And that goes again to that issue of them trying to kind of stretch the runtime. You can tell that they're just throwing words at each other sometimes just because they need to find some sort of conversation to throw down on the page to stretch it. There's a bunch of character logic that is blatantly just to push story forward, and it ends up being very frustrating, at least for me personally. I've seen a lot of people kind of say online that this film, it's like people doing dumb things, which, is kind of the old school horror way of doing things, that, people just do really stupid things just to move the story where you're trying to get it to go. There is so much of that in this film, and even for how the characters are set up, who they are, and their situations, they would never do these things. They would never say these things. They would never do these things, and they would never allow these things. The way they react to things don't feel realistic for how these characters are established. So that just leads to not thinking it through enough, and it seems like, I don't know, were these scripts rushed? I don't know. I also have a theory that it feels to me like this could have been a show that wasn't connected to the Alien franchise at all in the beginning. Because if you watch it and you reflect on it, there's not a lot of xenomorph in this. And if you just take out the xenomorph aspect of it, it's the exact same show. Nothing hinges on xenomorphs in this show. So that leads me to believe that it's one of these things, and it does happen in Hollywood, where they'll find a script for a movie or a script for a show or anything and be like, it's not written to be this, but if we just threw a few things in that connect to this, then we can just tack it to this franchise. So it really felt to me like that's what happened here. Now, I could be very wrong about that, but it presents that way, which is a problem. There should have been a lot more hinging on this whole xenomorph thing. Now, I think that they were planning to do that with how things end. They plan to do that in maybe a season 2. But like I said, I'm not so sure they're going to get one. And I feel like planning to have a season 2 before you even air season 1 is very arrogant. And I really don't think you should do that nowadays, because there are tons of shows that air and they never get a second season. The majority of them, I'd say. It really felt like there needed to be a lot more mayhem in this film. There's there's too much downtime. There needed to be a lot more wild stuff going on, in my opinion. You didn't even get a whole lot of that in the final episode. I thought the final episode, I'm like, all right, they're just going to jam pack it in there. It's going to be exciting. It's going to be great. Not really. A little bit of it. A very little bit of it. It just kind of ends with this whimper, unfortunately. There's way too much time wasting going on in the final episode. Yeah, that's one of the biggest things. A lot of people are very let down with that final episode. The reason is you have to go big. You have to give this huge payoff. People sat through 7 episodes that were close to an hour each. That's a lot of time to invest in a show. There's a lot of, development going on. They're, bonding to these characters. They're seeing all these potential ways that the show could go. And then to just not give much of any payoff, that's what kills shows. And I think that killed this show most likely. But I would love to be wrong. I would love to be wrong and see that they're going to do a season 2. Because could they come back and make it even better? Obviously, yes. They definitely could. This literally feels like it wasn't written to have anything to do with Alien. Yes, exactly. It was just shoehorned in later. Yep. Very unfortunate. Now, that said, it looks really good. Really good acting. I like a lot of the characters. I love the premise. I love the setting. There's a lot of really good things to like here. It's just the story just doesn't go where it really can, and they don't have as much action and mayhem as they really should have, and they don't have as much xenomorph as they should have. So overall, I still enjoyed it enough, so I'm going to give it a 3 out of 5 stars, but I also thought about going 2.5, but I think, the positive things get it to a 3. So 3 out of 5 stars for me. Would love to hear other people's opinions on it. Put it in the comments. We can talk spoilers in the comments, no problem. I just do my reviews as no spoilers when it's newer. So yeah, but do me a favor and do the free things to help my channel out. Hit subscribe, thumbs up on the video, hit the notification bell button so you know when I'm putting up new videos. And if you want to pitch in a few dollars for some perks with my channel, I have a link in the description for memberships with it. All tiers get early access to my videos, and sometimes it's like months in advance because sometimes I'm scheduling out that far with some of them. But anyway, you can look at it. Anyway, regardless, thank you very much for taking your time to watch this. And until next time, keep it brutal.